I'm Mallory Kane. I'm 31. And 3 months ago, I watched my mom post on Facebook that she was so proud of her only child, a glowing birthday tribute to my brother Gavin, while I sat alone in the NICU, listening to the beeping monitors that told me my daughter Lyndon was slipping away. She wasn't their first grandchild, but she was mine and Jenna's. We fought for her. We saved for IVF for years. We tracked hormones, counted days, scheduled every damn thing. When I finally saw those 2 lines on the test, I sobbed so hard I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just joy. It was disbelief, fear, relief. We were finally getting to start a family, but apparently in the eyes of my parents, Martin and Susan Kane, none of that counted. Because Jenna's a woman. And I'm a woman. And I guess that made Lyndon less real to them. I should have seen it coming. Honestly, I probably did. But I wanted so badly for this to be different. Growing up, I was always the footnote to Gavin's headline. If he got a B, they threw him a just because pizza night. I brought home straight A's and heard, well, that's expected from you. He crashed his first car? They laughed and bought him a used Jeep the next month. I got a scholarship to Chapel Hill and still had to take out loans for textbooks. I told myself it was just a different kind of love. A quieter love. Now I know it was just absence. When I came out at 22, it wasn't dramatic. My mom blinked twice and said, I guess we always sort of knew. Dad didn't say much at all. Jenna came into the picture a year later, and they were polite. Not warm, not cruel. Just polite. Which sounds tolerable until you try to raise a child around that kind of silence. You can only translate so many eye rolls and clipped conversations before it starts to feel like you're parenting alone. We live in Raleigh. I'm a third-grade teacher. Jenna's a therapist. Our house isn't big, but it's filled with light and books and music, and when Lyndon arrived, more love than I thought 2 people could hold. She was born early, 29 weeks, just 2 pounds, 10 ounces. I still remember how tiny her fingers looked wrapped around mine, like she was trying to hold on to this world with everything she had. When we called my parents from the hospital, it was Jenna's mom who showed up, with blankets, food, fresh socks, even hand lotion for me. My parents sent a card that said, we're praying for a quick recovery. Love, Mom and Dad. Not we're coming, not we're here for you, not what do you need, just a Hallmark platitude and a signature. I taped it to the side of Lyndon's incubator anyway, because I wanted her to believe she was wanted by everyone. I wanted to believe it too. We stayed in that NICU every hour we could. Some nights we slept in shifts in the waiting room chairs. Jenna read to Lyndon through the plastic walls. I sang her the same lullaby my mom used to hum when I was little. It felt like the least I could do. To pass down the one part of my childhood that still held any warmth. The day I got the notification on Facebook, I was eating peanut butter crackers and praying Lyndon would gain an ounce. My mom had posted a picture of Gavin blowing out candles at some fancy restaurant with the caption, proud of our only child, our sunshine, our rock. Happy birthday, Gavin? I blinked. Read it again. I read it out loud to Jenna. She didn't say a word, just slowly stood and walked out of the room. Later, she admitted she cried in the stairwell because she didn't want me to see. That post shattered something in me I'd been taping back together for years. She had said, only child, while our daughter, her grandchild, was fighting for her life in a clear plastic box 2 floors down. I didn't confront them right away. Not yet. I didn't have the strength. Lyndon still needed me more than I needed answers, but I knew that post wasn't an accident. It wasn't a slip. It was a choice. Like every other choice they'd made to center Gavin, to erase me, to pretend my life didn't fit their photo albums. I didn't know then how bad it would get. I didn't know what they'd say when Lyndon died. And I definitely didn't know what I'd do when I saw their faces again. But I knew this. I wouldn't be silent anymore. The night Lyndon died was quiet. Too quiet. We had gotten used to the sounds of the NICU. Tiny alarms, soft beeps, nurses whispering in the dark. But that night, something was different. Her oxygen dipped just once, then again, and again. The nurse came in and gave us that look. Not panicked, not calm, just the look that says we're not out of the woods anymore. I don't remember sitting down. I just remembered Jenna gripping my hand so hard I felt it in my bones. The pediatric intensivist, a woman named Doctor Kaplan, came in and knelt by us. I'll never forget her eyes. She didn't say, "There's still hope." She said, "We're doing everything we can, but I want you both to prepare." At 3:12 a.m., Lyndon's heart stopped. They let us hold her. For the first time, without wires, without machines. She was warm at first. That warmth left faster than I was ready for. Jenna cradled her against her chest, tears soaking Lyndon's hospital swaddle. I just kept whispering, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Like some broken mantra I couldn't stop. The hospital chaplain came in, then the counselor. They spoke gently, like walking on ice. I nodded a lot. I think I even thanked them. That's what you do when your world ends, apparently. You say thank you while your baby is wheeled away in a bassinet without wheels. At sunrise, we sat in the hospital's family room, empty coffee cups in hand, staring at the wall. The only thing louder than our grief was the silence from my parents. No call, no message, no knock on the hospital room door. I called them. I don't even know why I did it. Some ancient part of me must have believed, hoped, they'd show up this time. Maybe that birthday post was a slip. Maybe they'd redeem themselves now. The phone rang 5 times before my mom answered. "Hey, Mallory," she said, like she'd just picked up the phone during a lunch break. "Mom, she's gone," I said. A pause. Too long. "Oh, Mallory. That's terrible," she said flatly. "No, are you okay?" "No, we're on our way, just, that's terrible." I told her we were planning a small memorial, that I'd text the details. She said okay and hung up. I remember looking at my phone after, like it would explain her tone, like maybe I hallucinated how little she cared. The funeral was set for Saturday. Small chapel near the hospital. Jenna's family handled everything. Her dad printed photos of Lyndon, her mom brought soft music and snacks, her cousins flew in from Boston. I sent the details to my parents. On Saturday morning, I wore the same navy blue dress I wore to my first teaching interview. I chose it because Lyndon always kicked the most when I wore it during my pregnancy. I pressed her hospital bracelet into my palm as we left the house. As we pulled up to the chapel, Jenna whispered, "Do you think they'll come?" I didn't answer. I couldn't say what I already knew. They didn't show. Not my mother. Not my father. Not even a text. The service was beautiful. I guess that's a strange word to use, but it was. We lit a candle. We played the recording of Jenna reading Goodnight Moon. We passed around a tiny stuffed rabbit that had lived in Lyndon's incubator. People cried with us, hugged us, told us she mattered. Afterwards, someone handed me their phone. I assumed it was a picture or a condolence message. It was a screenshot. My mother smiling in a long red gown. Dad beside her in a tuxedo. Champagne glasses raised. The caption read, 50 years of love. Kane family forever. They were at a formal anniversary party while we buried their granddaughter. I didn't cry. Not right away. I think my body didn't believe it yet. I just handed the phone back and walked outside. Jenna followed. "Mallory?" she said softly. "She wore red," I said. "To the party, while I put our baby's urn in the ground." That night, I didn't speak to anyone. I sat in the nursery, surrounded by the quiet toys, the rocking chair, the clothes Lyndon never wore. I thought about every time I tried to believe I mattered to them. Every time I excused the small slights. Every time I told myself they just weren't emotional people. Numbered this was who they were. It took me 3 days to write the message. I sent it to them in a single line. "We buried your granddaughter on Saturday. I hope the champagne was worth it. No reply. Jenna asked if I wanted to block them. Not yet, I said. Because something in me had shifted. For the first time, I wasn't grieving just Lyndon. I was grieving the myth of my parents. And I was done pretending. They didn't get to rewrite this. They didn't get to act like they'd mourned her. And I hadn't even started showing them what that silence had cost. 3 days after the funeral, I couldn't sleep. Again. I was lying in Lyndon's nursery, on the floor, staring up at the paper lanterns we'd hung from the ceiling during my second trimester. Clouds, moons, and tiny silver stars that Jenna had insisted on because she's going to love the sky. I should have taken them down, or at least avoided this room. But I couldn't. It was the only place that still smelled like her. Jenna found me around 2 a.m., curled up with Lyndon's hospital blanket. She didn't say anything. She just sat beside me, her hand finding mine in the dark. I keep thinking about that photo, I said. She didn't have to ask which one. The one of my parents laughing at their party. Champagne flutes raised while we were lowering Lyndon into the ground. My mom wore red. My dad had on the same cufflinks he wore to my high school graduation, the last one he ever attended. I can't let them rewrite this, I whispered. They're going to pretend they mourned her. They're going to act like they were there. Jenna squeezed my hand. So don't let them. It sat in my chest for a few hours, like a pebble in a shoe, just annoying enough to force movement. By morning, I knew what I needed to do. I didn't write a revenge post. Not at first. That's not how I work. I wrote a letter, handwritten, 4 pages, no insults, no bitterness, just facts and grief and memory. I wrote about my childhood and how I used to believe silence was just another form of love. I wrote about sitting alone at my middle school band recital because they forgot the date. I wrote about watching Gavin unwrap a Rolex at 18 while I got a grocery store cake with my name spelled wrong at 21. I wrote about the IVF, the NICU, the funeral. I wrote about the post. Proud of our only child. Then I included photos of Lyndon's incubator, of the funeral program, of the urn. And I ended the letter with one sentence. If you couldn't show up for her life, the least you can do is witness her death. I scanned it, saved it, and then I emailed it to every member of the extended Kane family. All of them. Not out of anger, out of necessity. Because I knew how my parents worked. They were masters of the reframe. The story would become, Mallory didn't even tell us in time, or we were sick, or it was a private thing. I'd seen it happen over birthdays, holidays, even my engagement to Jenna. They twisted truth so casually it became art. This time, they weren't getting that chance. I sent the email at 8:34 a.m. Then I turned off my phone. The storm hit faster than I expected. By noon, my cousin Hannah had texted, "Please tell me this isn't real." By 2 p.m., my Uncle Greg replied to the whole thread. "Martin, Susan, this is beyond shameful. I don't know how you sleep at night." By dinner, Jenna's phone lit up with screenshots from Facebook. My mom's anniversary post was gone, replaced by some vague Bible quote about grief coming in waves. But it was too late. People had seen the truth, and people started reaching out, not just to me, but to them. My mom called that evening. I let it ring. She left a voicemail. "Mallory, I can't believe you'd air family business like that. This is very hurtful to your father and me. You've humiliated us." That word, humiliated, was doing a lot of work. Not hurt. Not heartbroken for you. Humiliated. Like they were the victims of my story instead of the architects. I didn't call back. What I didn't expect was what came after. The quiet replies. The ones that didn't go to the group thread. My great-aunt Claire, who I hadn't spoken to in 10 years, sent me a short email. "I lost a baby in 1968. No one talked about it. You just moved on. Thank you for refusing to be silent. Lyndon was real. She mattered. I'm sorry your parents didn't see that." My dad's cousin Jim, who I barely remembered from childhood cookouts, wrote, "Your parents were at that party bragging about Gavin's engagement. They didn't say a word about your daughter. Not one." I read those messages sitting in our backyard, wrapped in Jenna's hoodie, the chill from October finally biting through North Carolina's long summer. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel triumphant. But I did feel seen. 2 days later, a white envelope showed up in our mailbox. No return address. Inside, a check for $5,000, a note in my dad's handwriting, just one line. "Use this for something meaningful in Lyndon's name." No apology. No signature. Just an attempt at penance without the courage to own it. I showed it to Jenna. She stared at it for a long time. "We should donate it to the NICU," she said, quietly. Under her name, I nodded. That night, I sat down and started building something. Not a revenge campaign. Not a family expose. A scholarship. The Lyndon Grace Fund for Early Infant Support. It would take time, paperwork, meetings, but it would last longer than a funeral, longer than a Facebook post. It would be real, like she was. 2 weeks after I launched the Lyndon Grace Fund, my parents showed up at our house. No warning, no text, just a knock on the door at 10:17 on a Saturday morning while Jenna and I were folding laundry in the living room. I looked through the peephole and felt my stomach drop. Martin and Susan Kane. My parents standing side by side like two people waiting for a real estate tour, dressed way too nicely for an unannounced visit. Mom had her hair done, makeup perfect. Dad had on the same jacket he wore to church the last time we ever went as a family, which was maybe 10 years ago, now that I think about it. Jenna stood behind me, quiet. She didn't say, "Don't answer it," but she didn't have to. I opened the door halfway. "Hi," I said flatly. "Mallory," my mom said, like she was relieved I hadn't slammed the door. "We'd like to talk, if you'll let us." I stood there a second, just processing. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because it hit me how long it had been since they'd looked me in the eye. Really looked. I stepped outside and pulled the door shut behind me. "You have 5 minutes." My dad cleared his throat like this was a business meeting. "We heard about the scholarship," he started. "The Lyndon Grace Fund." My mom jumped in. "We want to support it, publicly. We'd like to help organize a fundraiser. Maybe host something at the house." There it was. The play. They couldn't show up for the funeral. Couldn't pick up the phone. But now that there was a public effort, now that other people were watching, suddenly they were interested in honoring Lyndon. I stared at them for a long moment. "You want to host a fundraiser?" I asked slowly. "Yes," my mom said, nodding eagerly. "We could turn the backyard into a little garden party. Something tasteful. We could invite the neighbors, the church group, Gavin's friends." "Right," I said, "because Gavin's friends are the ones who remember my daughter." She flinched. My dad pressed on, tone clipped like always. "We want to help repair what's been broken, Mallory. You airing all of this to the family, it caught us off guard." "I didn't air anything," I said, my voice calm but cold. "I told the truth, that's all." "We didn't think you'd be so public," Mom said quietly. "Lyndon was public," I said. "She was a person, a real one, who died, and the people who were supposed to care the most decided she didn't matter." They stood in silence, my words landing like bricks between us. "You can write a check," I said finally. "You already did. That was useful. Thank you. But you don't get to make this about your redemption. Not here. Not with her name." Jenna opened the door just then and handed me Lyndon's memory book, a soft blue album with her footprints on the front. I opened to the last page and held it out to them. It was a photo I hadn't shared publicly. A picture of Jenna holding Lyndon in the hospital, wrapped in a pink blanket, eyes closed, face peaceful. "She was real," I said. "She had a name, a heartbeat, a laugh. She kicked every time we played Ella Fitzgerald in the car. She was here. And you chose not to be." My mom looked like she wanted to cry, but didn't. My dad just stood there, jaw locked, blinking too fast. I'm building this fund so that other babies like her have a better shot, I said, so their parents don't feel like ghosts when they lose them. And I'm doing it with people who showed up. They said nothing. I stepped back and opened the door. Goodbye, Mom, Dad. They didn't fight. They didn't argue. They just left. Not out of understanding, out of defeat. That night, I posted the photo publicly, the one from the memory book. I captioned it, "This is Lyndon." She lived for 18 days. She changed everything. And every step we take now is to honor the love she gave us in that short, fierce time. I didn't tag my parents. I didn't need to. People knew. The message was clear. You don't get to claim what you ignored. I wasn't doing this to get even anymore. This wasn't revenge in the usual sense. This was reclamation of my story, of my voice, of Lyndon's name. We printed her name onto the first scholarship check a week later. It went to a NICU nurse who was starting a fellowship in grief counseling. Her name was Talia. She cried when she got the letter. "I want to help other parents the way someone helped you," she said. I nodded, but inside I thought, no one helped us. We helped ourselves. And now, maybe someone else won't have to carry it all alone. The 1-year mark came faster than I expected. I used to count Lyndon's life in days, 18 to be exact. And then I counted the weeks after, then months, then seasons. But suddenly, there we were, back in October. Cool air, yellow leaves, and grief that had changed shape but never really left. Jenna and I planned a small remembrance in our garden. Nothing formal, no speeches, just the people who had shown up when it mattered. We planted the rose bush that had been sitting in a ceramic pot since spring. Jenna's dad built a wooden bench and engraved her name in the slats. We lit candles. We let people bring stones, flowers, stories. It wasn't about grief anymore. It was about grounding and letting Lyndon be part of the world, even if the world never got to meet her. Half an hour into the gathering, while I was talking with a NICU nurse we'd grown close to, I saw a familiar figure standing near the edge of the backyard. It was Gavin, my brother. He hadn't spoken to me in over a year, not since the funeral, not since the email. I didn't even know if he'd read everything I sent. He'd been radio silent, still showing up to our parents' parties from what I'd heard, still being the Kane family golden boy. But there he was, dressed simply. No suit, no champagne smile. Just jeans, a dark button-up, and something in his hands. He looked at me, then down at the small stuffed rabbit he was holding. The same kind Lyndon had in the NICU. I didn't move, didn't say anything. He walked over to the rose bush, knelt down, and placed the rabbit gently next to it. Then he whispered something I couldn't hear. And then he said it again, louder. Her name was Lyndon. I felt everything stop for a second, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. He stood up slowly and looked at me, his voice rough. "I should have come sooner," he said. "I should have seen her. I didn't. I followed their lead. I'm sorry." I stared at him for a long time. "You didn't even reply to the funeral notice," I said. "I know." He nodded. "I didn't know how to face you, or her, or myself." The silence that followed wasn't angry. It wasn't forgiving either. It was just honest. Jenna stepped forward and offered him a candle. He took it without a word and lit it for our daughter. Later that evening, when most guests had gone, I found him sitting alone on the bench. He turned to me, hesitating. "You know they lied, right?" I blinked. "About what?" "They told everyone they couldn't make the funeral because Dad had surgery complications. They even printed a note in the church bulletin." I laughed, not because it was funny, because of course they did. "And now," Gavin continued, "people are starting to talk. Aunt Sylvia said the church elders called a meeting. There's fallout. They're losing support, donations. They're standing, so there it was. The cost. Not in dollars, not in court, but in reputation, in community, the thing they valued most. They lost the image they built for decades, shattered not by scandal, but by truth. A week later, I received a certified letter, my parents' handwriting on the envelope. Inside, a typed letter, cold and formal. It essentially said, "We don't appreciate the damage you've done to our name. We wish you well, but we believe it's best for us to maintain distance moving forward." I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel satisfaction. I felt closure. They were done trying to control the narrative, and I was done needing anything from them. I sat in Lyndon's room that night, holding her bunny, the one we'd kept. I thought about how loud silence can be, how it echoes more than words sometimes, and how the only way to quiet it is by speaking. For me, justice didn't come in courtrooms or fights. It came in truth, in letting the world see what I lived through, without filters, without shame. And in doing that, I finally found the thing I'd been missing all my life: peace. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You can survive heartbreak that breaks your bones, but silence, the kind that makes you doubt your own story, that's the wound that lingers. And sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is to name what others refuse to say out loud. If any part of this felt like your story too, if you've ever been erased, minimized, or pushed aside, I hope you'll share in the comments. Sometimes just being heard is the first step back to yourself. And if you're still here, thank you. Truly. Feel free to subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this. But either way, just know, you're not alone. You never were.